I'm 12 years old, and I'm sitting in Mrs. O'Malley's language arts class, seventh grade language arts class, at our school on our reservation. I've just finished my assignment early, as I always did, so that I could go to the back of the room where my desk was, and I could doodle cartoons. And so my best friend David and I had been doodling for 2 years up to that point, and we had read every issue of Mad Magazine. And we had this dream of being the next Al Jaffe, the next Don Martin, or the next Sergio Aragonés, who were all artists in that magazine. And so I went back there on this particular day, and I open up my notebook, and I'm sitting there drawing this cartoon of myself as a knight in shining armor, with the shield in my right hand and the sword in left hand and my sword in my right hand. And I'm battling this dragon, this fire-breathing dragon that looked just like Mrs. O'Malley. And I'm sitting there, I must have been giggling too hard or too loud, because pretty soon 2 feet appeared in front of my desk. I slowly look up, and there in all her greatness was Mrs. O'Malley. She swiped my cartoon, she glanced at it, and then she violently took me by the ear, and she led me all the way up to the front of the classroom, the corner where the trash can was. And she said, "You're going to stand here until lunchtime," which was about 20 minutes away. And then she tore up my cartoon into little pieces, and she tossed it into the trash can. A single tear fell into that trash can, and to this day, I'm not sure if that tear was because she had just embarrassed me in front of the whole class, including the girl I had a crush on, or that she tore up my creation. I continued drawing. In fact, a couple months later, during that same year, another teacher during parent-teacher conferences told my parents, "Your son is gifted." And they perked up. "Really?" And then she said, "In cartooning." My dad was like, "What?" But I kept drawing over the years in middle school, high school, college, and even in the Marine Corps. I continued drawing cartoons for the pure enjoyment of it, and still that dream of someday becoming a cartoonist. So one day I was 38 years old, and I hadn't gotten a job as a blackjack dealer at one of the casinos here. And it was I had recently become a single father, 3 young kids, and I was feeling great providing for them because I was making $300-400 a day alone in tips. And so one day I'm dealing cards, and then I stopped. And in that one moment, I thought, wait a second, a monkey could do this. Anybody could do this. This was not what I was meant to do. And so I quit my job that day, and I went back to school. I went to Fort Lewis in Durango, Colorado, where natives could go to school free because the college sat on Southern Ute Indian tribal land. And so I was this old 38-year-old creepy guy who sat in the back along with these 18, 19-year-olds, and I wound up on the school paper to complete my credentials to graduate. And so I came up with this cartoon called Fort Leisure, which depicted college life at Fort Lewis. And it became so popular that the tribe that this land sat on, they had a newspaper, and the editor calls me one day, and he says, "Ricardo, we would love to have you draw for our newspaper, our bi-monthly newspaper." And I said, "Okay, sure." And then he says, "Could you make the characters Native American?" I never even thought about drawing a Native American cartoon. I guess the whole time I was drawing on white paper, so they must have been white characters, right? And so I'm in this dilemma. How do I do this without offending anyone? Should I make them into the stereotype, Hollywood stereotypical native with the feather, the braids, the loincloth? And the answer was yes. Except I decided to make my native characters more intelligent than their counterparts. And no one has complained since. And so I graduated in 2006. In 2007, miraculously, I found my native characters were accepted into the Santa Fe New Mexican, their cartoon page. And 2 weeks before, I was so excited they were going to accept them, but 2 weeks before, the editor calls me, Bernadette. She calls me and she says, Ricardo, we noticed that you turned in your cartoons all on white paper with black ink. Since we're going to put your cartoon directly on the page, would you mind coloring them? And up until that point, I had nothing for a name for my cartoon. I was just going to call it Caté's World. Pretty lame, right? And so, but then she said, can you color them? And I said, yes. And I must have paused because she asked, are you sure you can do this? And I said, yeah. You're positive? Yes. You have no reservations about this? Bernadette. She goes, what? That's the name of the cartoon. She goes, what? Without reservations. Two weeks later, after the cartoon came out, they asked me to come into the office, which I was glad to do. However, I was greeted by a stack of hate mail. And they were all from non-natives, by the way. And most of them said, this cartoon is not drawn well, this cartoon is not funny, this cartoon is racist. And so I decided to write one universal letter back to them. And it simply said, I'm sorry you feel that way about my cartoon, but my name is Ricardo Caté. I'm from Santo Domingo, Pueblo. I'm Native American, and this is how I see the world. And most of them wrote back, and they said, oh, you're Native American. I guess it's okay then. So as of 8 years ago, when they had voting to see which cartoons to keep, it turns out that my cartoon was 3 times more popular. It was a #1 cartoon. It was 3 times more popular than this one called Peanuts. And so now, I enjoy the awards that I've received for this award, including Best Editorial Cartoon of 2001. In 2022, the Governor's Award, but most recently, the Inkpot Award at the International Comic Con in San Diego. Other recipients of this award include Stan Lee in the 70s, Tim Burton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Steven Spielberg. So they are in great company, right? So I often think back to Mrs. O'Malley and her words. And I actually live by them, except I changed the very ending from this will never amount to anything unless you choose otherwise.